Well, I'm going to explain today why BRICS isn't really that much of a thing. Like, people on my channel keep on thinking that BRICS is going to take down the US dollar as if it's some kind of unified alliance. We have to, like, shatter that illusion. Because BRICS is basically a hodgepodge of countries that aren't first world countries. There is no BRICS dollar, and there will never really be a BRICS dollar. First of all, like, it's not really an alliance. It might be only an alliance in name only, but generally, an alliance has to either have economic or military interests. BRICS obviously has no military interests because they're scattered all over the world. Like places like Mexico, Brazil will always be like more military aligned with the United States than there ever will be with China and Russia. India is continuously fighting China on border skirmishes. Saudi Arabia just doesn't really care either way. So these countries, besides the Sino-Russian alliance, they don't really have much military interest. And also economically, besides the Sino-Russian alliance, they don't really have any economic interests with each other. Like, yes, China and Russia are aligned with the West. India is going to be more aligned with the United States on that than they are going to be with China and Russia. Saudi Arabia doesn't really care. They will actually do whatever's best for them. And that's kind of true with India as well. The countries in the Western Hemisphere, like Mexico, they're because of trade and proximity, they're always going to be more tied to the U.S. than they will to be like China or Russia or other parts of the world. So they're really not going to be like anti-U.S. Like if China and Russia like were to sanction like the United States, none of those other countries would actually join in. Like India, Saudi Arabia, like South Africa, Mexico, Brazil, they'd be like, yeah, screw you, we're still trading with the United States. So like none of like the biggest country in that group doesn't have any pull. Culturally, they don't really have any real, or politically, they don't really have any real interest either. China and Russia are authoritarian dictatorships. Saudi Arabia is basically a monarchy. India is actually a democracy, obviously. I don't really know what Mexico and Brazil are. I mean, like, I know technically what they are, but like Mexico, especially, like, is it run by the government? Is it run by the drug cartels? Who really knows, right? Like, we don't actually know about that. So I don't think they're more aligned with China and Russia politically than they are with the United States. Like, there are a lot of countries within BRICS that would actually benefit from a duopoly of US and Euro dominance. There are some that would actually benefit in more of a bipolar or tripolar world order. So they're not all aligned militarily, politically, economically, or even just like locally. Remember, as big of a problem as the EU has, they're still somewhat aligned because they're geographically in the same location. That's not true with BRICS. They're scattered all over the world. Only China and Russia and India maybe have proximity, but India is kind of like aligned against the other two. So they're not really aligned in any of those ways. And so there's no real like solid alliance between BRICS. It's basically like an acronym for countries that are not quite first world countries, but have some economic pull, but they don't all pull the same way, and they're often at odds with each other. It's not like NATO, where like, you know, if one member of the alliance gets attacked, everyone joins in. Or like even like, you know, the Eurozone, where they have like somewhat of a common currency and they have some similar economic and political interests because they're very much gathered in one area of the world. You know, that's one of the reasons why the UK, even being a major European country, has never really jived with the rest of Europe or the Euro because they're separated on an island. And that's only the English Channel. That's like 90 miles of water. And that's enough to cause the UK to be like, ta-ta, we don't want to be like you. Let me just sip our tea. And we don't want your currency. So basically, like, imagine like countries halfway across the world like that. They're never really going to have their own BRICS dollar. They're not economically aligned. And the alliance really only exists in name only. Like, they have some kind of meetings and conventions every now and then, but realistically, like, they're not all aligned against the US and Europe like some people think they are. There are many countries within that union that would actually benefit from the Europe and the United States staying dominant rather than China and Russia, especially those in the West. And I think countries like India would actually benefit more from like a more of like a Western-led world as well. Saudi Arabia probably doesn't care as long as people buy their gas and oil. And even culturally, like the Islamic Middle Eastern countries, they might not like the United States, but they don't really like China either, especially not with the Uyghur problem. You know, so like they're basically like against America because they're more powerful, because the U.S. is more powerful right now for the Middle East. But like economically, like Saudi Arabia, they're not really against the United States. It's really like the rebel countries like Iran, North Korea, Afghanistan that are more against the United States. And I don't think those are actually part of BRICS. The countries that are actually part of BRICS, they're not all aligned against the United States. A lot of them are more allied with the United States than anything else. So because they don't have any economic, political, cultural, or military interests that really align with each other, BRICS really isn't a threat to the US dollar because to be a threat to the US dollar, you all have to be economically aligned against the United States. And half of BRICS is more economically aligned to the United States than they ever will be to China or Russia. So that's why I don't really see BRICS as a big threat. Yeah, they can represent a large part of the global GDP, but they're not allied with each other. And if they're not allied with each other, they don't represent a cohesive force. The only reason the EU is like a powerful entity is because it's a cohesive force that has at least some economic and political interests in common. These countries really don't. So let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit the bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.